house in Baltimore side of a big Ravens victory in the land of Cleve. And as much as this week I'm writing about the ghost of Baltimore's football past, present, and future, here comes the past. The Indianapolis Colts come in this week as a 3-11 massive underdog, overmatched, outgunned. Chuck Pagano's in trouble. But I do know this. The Indianapolis Colts of the Irsay family can wreck football for us on the eve of Christmas Eve in Baltimore. Stephen Holder covers all things Colts for the Indianapolis Star. After many years of covering the Bucs in Tampa and down in Miami at the Herald, he has done 5 years there in Indianapolis. And you know what I think, man? I think you thought, well, this Andrew Luck guy's coming in. They made the playoffs 14 out of 15 years. This is going to be a good thing. I'm going to get to cover, another run like they've had in Green Bay and what they've done in New England. Boy, oh boy. I mean, this is, when you lose your quarterback, it really does take a turn very, very quickly, doesn't it, Stephen?
Yeah, there's nothing like it. It really changes everything. And when you couple that with the other injuries folks have had this year, they're really a shell of themselves. I mean, it doesn't excuse a lot of the issues they've had, and they've underperformed. There's no question about it, but it changes everything, and it changes the, in terms of what your objectives and your goals are for the season, they all change. And so that's what the Colts have dealt with, and they're not going to be the same team until they get this guy back and get him healthy.
Underperformed, that's exactly what it would say when Mr. Irsay fires my pal Chuck Pagano here in the near short term. Underperformed, but I don't. It's been such a mess, right? I mean, from Grigson, for them not necessarily being on the same page, to losing the quarterback, there really is no way to survive all of that if you're Chuck. And I think if you're Jimmy Irsay, there's no way you can let it stand. I mean, I just left Cleveland where Hugh Jackson is about to go 0-16 after going 1-15. I don't know that you can survive that. It's a results business, right? As sad as that is for a lot of the nice guys who get canned here.
Yeah, and that's what it boils down to. Look, for 3 years, the first 3 years under Chuck Pagano, this team went 11-5, and frankly, yeah, you sized it up perfectly. I thought I was coming in here to cover a nice little run. Thought it was going to be pretty fun. And frankly, it started out that way. Okay, my first season in 2013, they win their first playoff game under Pagano. The next season, they go to the AFC Championship game. They get blown out, but they look like they're on the verge. And then the last 2 seasons, they have just completely backslid. And this year really is the capper. They have now 3 wins going into week 16. So, yeah, you're right. It is a results business, and the results have been poor. There's no question about it. 500, 2 seasons in a row, and then right now, coming into this game, 3-11? Yeah, you can't survive that, especially in a franchise where they're used to excellence, okay? The Colts don't do 3 years without going to the postseason. That just doesn't happen around here, and that's what they're staring at right now.
Well, you got all the injuries, but then you go back to the drafts and say, what has it netted? And certainly around here for Ozzie Newsome and Eric DeCosta and the Joe Ortiz and all the guys that are involved in the draft, when the Matt Elams, don't get on the field here, when the Brashad Perrymans aren't looking good, and you're under 500 in October and the offense isn't playing well, heads start to roll and it becomes a very, very slippery slope. Chuck's had to do that without the quarterback, but to your point, it does not sort of offset how many players have come through there, and it's all added up. And they've been very competitive in the first half. A lot of these ball games, they've gone to overtime, but it really has been sort of a fourth quarter meltdown and a second half meltdown for them, right?
Yeah, and that's what's kind of undermined Chuck's argument this year, that this was brought about by the injuries and the absence of Andrew Luck. Certainly, those are huge factors. There's no question about it, and you can't just sort of ignore that. But you're right. They have been a competitive football team this year. They have had 7 games where they were tied or leading at halftime, okay? And they only won 2 of those. And that's just really disturbing. And a lot of those did come in the fourth quarter where they melted down in various fashions and just couldn't get it done. It's gotten to the point now where when they do have a lead in the fourth quarter, everyone's just kind of sitting around and waiting for it to happen. Like, okay, how's it going to happen this time? And it inevitably does happen, okay? And that goes even to Pittsburgh 3 weeks ago. They had the lead against the Steelers the whole way, and they found a way to sort of fumble it away at the end of the game. And Ryan Shazier, hope he gets better. He made a great play, great interception, and that was the ball game. So they have found unique and creative ways to lose, and that doesn't reflect well on the head coach, unfortunately.
How many of these guys are keepers in your mind, Steven? I mean, who's going to be back with the team next year? And is anyone in a 3-11 team excelled to some degree to say, well, they've got 3 or 4 keepers here? And look, I talked to a lot of Browns beat writers over the years. It's tough to do when you stink. It feels like you might have a player or two that's a Pro Bowler, but it feels like every position you could look at come draft time or come free agency and say, we could do better there, or we'd like to do better there.
Well, look, I think there's going to be a lot of turnover. Look, this season with the new general manager, Chris Ballard, he came in and basically torched the entire defense, and he started over. He basically scrapped that thing. So they're very new on defense, and they're not finished tinkering with that side of the ball. They're going to make some more changes there. But the defense has the start of a foundation they can work with. That's a workable unit over on defense if they get everybody healthy. Malik Hooker, for example, excellent draft pick. That kid's going to be a star. He's on IR. He tore his ACL. Bad break there, but that kid is going to be a star, I feel like, if he gets healthy. But on offense, I think they've gotten to the point now they need to retool their offense. They did it on defense, and now they had a great draft class in 2012 with guys like Andrew Luck and T.Y. Hilton and Kobe Fleener and guys like that. Well, that was 6 years ago. And in the NFL, that's a generation. So they've got to retool that offense. They've got guys on that side of the ball that aren't going to be here next year, and I think it's going to look very different. You'll have Andrew Luck, you'll have T.Y. Hilton, Ryan Kelly, and guys like that. But I think there are a lot of guys, a lot of faces on that side of the ball who are going to change. Guys like Dante Moncrief, who's a free agent. I have doubts about him returning. There's going to be a lot of change offensively for the Indianapolis Colts, I feel like.
It's crazy the Colts have a guy named LaRaven, right?
They do.
I remember him from draft day. I thought, well, I don't know the Ravens are going to do that, but it does make for a little interesting story. Stephen Holder joining us here. He covers all things Colts for the Indianapolis Star. You can find him at Indy Star as well as at Holder Stephen, and that's STPHEN there. And look, I'm a big fan of Chuck. Chuck was our first phone call when my wife was diagnosed with leukemia 4 years ago. Chuck came through for a charity event for us. I've known him from the beginning. I know he'll go back and coordinate or maybe get another chance. He coached at the college level for a long period of time. He's clearly had his own battle with health and has a great understanding and great faith about him as well. So, some thoughts for you on sort of the lost era for him and how this thing sort of got away, because there's a big concoction in how Chuck Pagano is going to be shown the door, because there were some good times there, but it really does, you're never going to look at this and say, well, what if the quarterback stayed healthy? And look, Luck's The notion that he's going to come back and play like he used to play or play at all, right, it's still very, very dicey. He's in a scary sort of period, much like Peyton Manning was at the end of his career, right?
Yeah, a little bit, and they're now sort of working through the next phase with Andrew Luck. I'll get Chuck in a second. Basically, with Andrew Luck, they now want to get him back into the throwing regimen and see how the arm responds, how that shoulder responds, and if it responds favorably, then they keep moving forward and just keep it moving. Now, if he develops that soreness that happened when they were trying to get him activated earlier this year, then they got to look at options, potentially more therapy or more surgery, which would certainly be the worst option. But they do feel like they will get him back. There's this is the point right now that they're at. This is the most optimistic they've been since he started encountering issues. So we'll see. They feel really good, but you never know with these things, and that has been proven in this particular story. That has been proven repeatedly. When it comes to health issues, never take anything for granted. Now, as it relates to Chuck, look, Chuck Pagano is, I think, a very unique head coach. He's certainly got defensive expertise, and a lot of guys generally have expertise on one side of the ball or the other. But really, that's not what has ever been his greatest attribute. His greatest attribute has been getting guys to play for him. This team has never been super talented under Chuck Pagano. They had a super talented quarterback, but through and through, this roster was never that complete, I guess I'd say. But this team had a great way about it in Chuck's first few years, and you saw it in their ability to bounce back from losses. They had 2 years straight where they never lost 2 games in a row, and they just had this way about them coming back in the fourth quarter. A lot of that was attributable to Chuck Pagano's motivation. He's just a really unique motivator, and he got guys to play for him and got the most out of those guys in terms of them buying in and just getting on board with it. And sometimes it would sound kind of cheesy and like the little lines actually work. Well, they did. So I just don't know how he did it, but he's really unique that way. So the problem with that is you have to wonder, is there a shelf life for that kind of thing? You know how the NFL is, and the players they have minds of their own. Do they tune that out eventually? All those challenges you got to deal with. And then there's just injuries and circumstances. And then issues with the general manager, which were well documented for a period of 2 or 3 years. So he had a lot of challenges to deal with here, not to say anything of his health, which he certainly came through with flying colors, thank goodness.
Stephen Holder joining us here from the Indianapolis Star, talking all things Colts, all brought to you by our friends at Compass Point Golf Course down in Pasadena. The second the snow melts off, they're ready for you down there at Compass Point Golf. Best place to play this fall and into the winter. They are open when the greens allow. Al's Seafoods down in Essex as well. They've been steaming crabs and making those crab cakes down there, sending my mom up the shrimp with the onions. Back since the 1970s. They are the oldest crab house in Baltimore, still at Stemmers Run and Eastern at the foot of 702. Go see my man Chad the Crab Man at Al's Seafood in Essex. Last thing for you, and this is a kind of an interesting thought for that division and sort of putting the Jacksonville Jaguars and Houston and Nashville out of business for 15 years when Peyton Manning was around there. Now that thing has sort of opened up a little bit, we might see Jacksonville in 2 weeks. Might wind up seeing Nashville before it's all over with. And certainly Houston with the quarterback and their health issues and sort of the bounce back of the offseason and maybe a coaching change there as well has been rumored. But that division has changed through this thing too for Indianapolis, and all those boats around there have risen a little bit. That's going to make the challenge even more difficult moving forward, I think.
Yeah, I think it's a really important point, and it's something that people here in Indianapolis are not used to, and they better, I think, get used to that reality. The Jacksonville Jaguars are not going away. Okay, they have been having top 5 picks now for, the last 10 years, it feels like, and as it turns out, some of those guys are pretty good. Look, we were down there a few weeks ago, and Marcel Darius, who was one of the Buffalo Bills franchise players, he's coming off the bench. And I was like, man, I tell you what, they got some horses on defense. And Jalen Ramsey, these guys are studs. So, look, Jacksonville is the real deal. They're not going away. I saw Marcus Mariota make some plays last weekend, and I don't think that team is where they want it to be yet, but that guy's still very young. And then you got Deshaun Watson down in Houston, who, if he comes back to form, that changes everything in that franchise if they can ever get J.J. Watt on the field. But I tell you, for about 4 or 5 weeks, Houston was the story of the NFL for a little bit there. So this division has suddenly gotten very exciting and very interesting, and it certainly will not be one where the Colts, as they did a few years ago, won 16 straight in their division. Those days are over. This AFC South has taken a turn, and it's a tougher division, no question about it.
Any chance they can win this week, Steve?
Certainly a chance. I mean, they've been in most of their games all year. They aren't getting blown out most weeks. They're in it, but I think Baltimore's got more to play for. Certainly they have more to play for. And I think the Colts, the injuries at this point have taken their toll, and I think it's starting to really, really show. And you start to wonder, the problem with the Colts is when bad things happen right now with what they have left, I think guys kind of go into tank when bad things happen in games and they don't recover well from it. So I think Baltimore wins.
My man, I appreciate the time and all the Indianapolis media for coming on this week in the short week, and happy holidays to you. We'll get you in here, get you out of here in time for the holidays this weekend. Nice of the NFL to schedule this one ahead of time for us. I had to play on Christmas night last year in Pittsburgh, but Mr. Rooney's cookies were nice there in the press box at Heinz Field. The outcome didn't go so well. Do not come in here and wreck our Christmas, and please pass that along to Chuck, okay?
All right, I got you.
Appreciate you, Steve. Thanks for coming on, man.
Thanks.
He is Holder Steven out on Twitter. Steven Holder out at the Indianapolis Star covering all things Colts. You can find me out in the buyatoyota.com audio of all 24 hours a day from anywhere in the world on your mobile device by downloading the TuneIn radio app. We do come in crystal clear from anywhere in the world. The morning newspaper ships digitally to your email inbox every morning at 7 a.m. It's like clockwork. It's all brought to you by Planet Fitness and PlanetFitness.com, where it is still $10 a month to get in the best shape of your life, guaranteed. 2018, it's sneaking up on us. Dennis Colatzos will be here on Thursday from 3 until 5. It is the SSV on WNST. It's all brought to you by Coons Ford of Security Boulevard, where they also sponsor our WNST tech service. So the nanosecond that the Orioles deal Manny Machado, you'll get it first on the WNST tech service. Nasty at WNST.net finds me. I am on Facebook, Twitter, LinkedIn, Snapchat, Instagram, streaming live on our Facebook, as well as our YouTube WNSTV channel. Happy holidays. I'm Nestor. We are WNST.net, AM 1570, and WNST Towson, Baltimore, and we never stop talking Baltimore sports.